At exactly 3:47 a.m., Jonathan Reed's phone vibrated across the nightstand like a warning from another life he thought he had buried. The room was quiet, except for the soft breathing of his new wife, Grace, asleep beside him in their Chicago apartment. Outside, snow fell in thick silence, but inside his chest something shattered before he even answered. The voice on the other end belonged to a trembling nurse from St. Mary's Hospital in Milwaukee, delivering words that froze time. His first wife, Rebecca, the woman he once promised forever, was dying and asking for him. The past he had struggled to rebuild over 2 painful years suddenly stood at his door, demanding a decision no heart could make without breaking. If you believe in kindness and second chances, take a moment right now to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this remind us how complicated love and forgiveness can truly be. Jonathan had not spoken to Rebecca in months. Their marriage had ended after years of quiet arguments and distance that grew like cracks in glass until everything finally shattered. Rebecca had battled a serious illness during their last year together, and while Jonathan tried to stay strong, the exhaustion of hospitals and endless fear slowly drained their bond. After the divorce, he moved to Chicago, where he met Grace, a warm, patient woman who helped him rediscover laughter and peace. They married quietly, hoping to build something new from the ruins of the past. Jonathan convinced himself that chapter was closed forever, until that early morning call reopened wounds he never allowed to heal. He sat on the edge of the bed staring into darkness while guilt and confusion twisted inside him. Grace woke gently, noticing his pale face and shaking hands. Without asking questions, she sensed the storm inside him. Jonathan struggled to explain that Rebecca was dying and wanted to see him one last time. The silence that followed felt heavier than any argument. Grace had always known about Rebecca's illness and the complicated history between them. Yet the reality of that phone call placed her in an emotional shadow she never expected to face. Jonathan felt torn between loyalty to the woman who once shared his life and commitment to the woman who now shared his future. As dawn crept through the frosted windows, Jonathan wrestled with memories that refused to stay buried. He remembered Rebecca's laughter during their college years in Ohio, their road trips across Colorado, and the night she first collapsed from illness. He also remembered the loneliness that grew during endless hospital visits, the helplessness he felt watching her suffer, and the painful conversations that led to their separation. Part of him feared reopening wounds that had nearly destroyed him, yet another part felt a deep sense of responsibility to be there for someone who once meant everything. Grace watched him pack a small overnight bag in silence, her eyes filled with a mix of compassion and quiet heartbreak. She never demanded that he stay, nor did she beg him to leave. Instead, she reminded him gently that compassion was never wrong and that some goodbyes were necessary for healing. Her words carried strength but also vulnerability, revealing how much courage it took to support him in such a painful moment. Jonathan realized that his decision was not simply about choosing between 2 women. It was about confronting who he had been, who he had become, and who he wanted to be when faced with the hardest moral test of his life. The drive to Milwaukee felt endless, the highway stretching beneath gray winter skies like a path between past and present. Each mile carried memories that refused to stay quiet. He remembered moments of joy with Rebecca, but also the arguments fueled by fear and exhaustion. He questioned whether his presence would bring her comfort or reopen old wounds. At the same time, guilt crept in whenever he thought of Grace alone at home, trusting him completely while he stepped back into a chapter she knew could never truly disappear. When Jonathan finally entered the hospital, the smell of antiseptic and the hum of machines dragged him back into a world he thought he had escaped. Rebecca looked fragile, her once bright spirit dimmed by illness, yet her eyes softened the moment she saw him. He felt the weight of unfinished emotions pressing against his chest. Hours passed as he sat quietly beside her bed, reflecting on the complexity of love that does not always end when relationships do. He realized that being there was not about rekindling the past, but about offering peace to someone who once shared his dreams and struggles. As the day faded into evening, Jonathan began to understand that his hardest choice was never about picking one life over another. It was about learning that love can exist in different forms without betrayal. Rebecca expressed gratitude for his presence, not as a husband, but as someone who had once been her safe place during the most difficult chapters of her life. Jonathan felt years of guilt slowly loosen their grip as he recognized that closure was a gift both of them needed to move forward, even if forward meant saying goodbye forever. Late that night, Rebecca passed away peacefully while Jonathan sat quietly beside her. The moment carried deep sadness, but also a sense of calm acceptance. He drove back to Chicago through falling snow, feeling emotionally drained yet strangely lighter, as though a heavy chapter had finally closed. When he returned home, Grace greeted him with a quiet embrace that held no judgment, only understanding. In that moment, Jonathan realized that true partnership was not about ownership, but about compassion strong enough to survive even the most complicated emotional storms. Before we reach the ending, here's a special request. Comment below with one word that describes what love means to you. Your thoughts could inspire someone else going through a difficult decision right now. Jonathan spent the following weeks reflecting on how fragile life truly was, and how easy it is to carry unresolved emotions that slowly poison the heart. Instead of allowing guilt to consume him, he chose to honor both relationships by becoming more honest, patient, and emotionally present. Grace supported him through grief, showing him that love built on understanding could endure even the shadows of the past. He realized that the hardest choices often reveal the deepest truths about who we are when compassion is tested. If this story touched your heart even a little, please like the video, share it with someone who believes in forgiveness, and subscribe for more stories that remind us of the power of empathy and humanity. Jonathan's journey taught him that love is not always simple, and sometimes the bravest decision is not choosing one person over another, but choosing kindness in every direction possible. In the quiet aftermath of loss, he discovered that healing begins when we face our past with honesty and move forward with gratitude for every second chance life offers.